You can't solve the problems in your life with the same thinking that created them. If your body's producing energy, but it's not replicating itself, then it's going to die. I don't tell you what to do. I help you navigate your own brain and see the world differently. So if you're not happy with the action you're taking, you need to change the way you see the world. All right. Let's get into this. Rocking it out with some music here. It's a big one. Episode 52. You notice, but on the video, if you watch the video, it's been coming in and out of focus. I've noticed it on the clips. I don't ever watch the podcast. I might listen to the first 15 minutes or so every once in a while because they make me laugh. But the clips, they've been going in and out of focus, and I think it's because I've had the aperture off from 1.4 to 1.8. So hopefully we can fix that. Something to do with the autofocus. And I know it happens when this happens, right? Like it's definitely going to do that, but it was just doing it for no reason. It was appearing to me. But episode 52, a year's worth of knowledge and fun. So the other name I had was a year's worth of shenanigans. Maybe we should have broke out the definition of shenanigans. I know what it means, but I couldn't define it, if that makes sense. In this episode, we're going to recap a year's worth of episodes and knowledge. Not all of them, but I got a list on here that I just want to briefly do a synopsis of. I thought this would be a cool podcast because if you don't know, the goal was to do an episode a week for a year, and we pretty much reached it. Could do the numbers on this, but you know, there was only one snafu where I had screwed up the recording. I was screwing around with the Rodecaster 2 over here, and like half of the audio was in Satan's voice.
Sugar is staying in the blood for a prolonged period of time. Why?
Which I hadn't realized because I didn't have headphones on. And so I didn't find that out till like Friday. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to miss this week. That's just the way it is. And so this is actually week 53, but episode 52 of hitting the goal, which has created a lot of reflection on my part, going back through some of these episodes. And yeah, it's been interesting to say the least. So we're going to recap a year's worth of episodes and knowledge, do a kind of a synopsis of some of the ones, got a long list, what moving forward looks like, because it's starting to look different for me. And we're going to have some fun. Because if we're not having fun, then we definitely shouldn't be doing it because this is a lot of energy and time. And if I'm not enjoying it, which I do, I totally enjoy it, but I need to reevaluate what's happening in my life and, you know, figure out what's going on with that. Surprise to Nathan as he's learning. So, I mean, I'll just say really quick, I'm gonna take a break. I'm going to take a month and just kind of reevaluate what exactly it is I want to do. I'm thinking about 1 or 2 episodes a month, maybe, and maybe putting some more focus on the YouTube channel and doing those 5 to 7 minute videos that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I thought what would happen is that we'd be able to get some revenue going through this, and then I could then take that revenue and put it into these videos, but that did not happen because come to find out, this isn't magic. It's a whole nother business, and you know, I just don't have the time to keep the gym running and grow that, which is priority 1, and grow this as well, you know? So that's the challenge that I've encountered over the past year. I have to do some reflecting. I want to take a month off and decide exactly what I'm going to do moving forward. But that's kind of where my thinking is now, you know, maybe focus on those 5 to 7 minute videos, divert some of the revenue I put towards this, towards that. Sorry, Nathan. And, you know, see what happens. But I'm going to think about it. I'm undecided. So, but for this episode 52, this is our outline of topics. We're going to do some updates. We're going to go down memory lane. We're going to do memory lane recap. That's what we ended up calling it. We'll talk about what moving forward looks like and then some final thoughts. Updates. Nope. Updates. Liquid death coming at you. The lighting looks a little bright today. Maybe it's just that screen. Updates. Football. Michigan had a bye week. They call it idle now. Maybe it's been called idle for a while. Who knows? Lions had a good victory over the Browns, which I didn't watch. It was such a nice day. I'm like, you know what? The Browns, the Lions, I'm 95% confident we're going to win this game. So it was pretty much domination. Once the Browns got to 10, they didn't do anything after that. I don't know. I only watched the highlights. I didn't watch the game. I was out at the coffee shop in some sun doing some reading. Tigers, big scare, but they clinched. They could have finished 10 games ahead, but that's not how it went. They did clinch a playoff berth, though, as they say. I guess you get berthed into the playoffs. Weather, summer is still here. It is an amazing time in Michigan in September, nearly October. This is September 30th as of the recording date. When you listen to this, it'll be October 6th or 7th, one or the other. And we'll be into October, and it still is showing, the 10-day forecast is showing sun and 70s. And so we're living the good life here, that's for sure. Subscribers, email 62, YouTube 144, and Spotify and Apple stay the same. Reminder, please submit your questions to dennis@dennisfenridge.com, where I would answer them if they came in. There's got to be a more efficient way to get questions to me. I think that what happens, happens to most people is an idea or something pops into their head and then it goes away, right? It doesn't end up in here's what needs to happen. And here's what I got good at. I read a book called Getting Things Done. If you have a challenge with these things that pop in your head that need to do and you don't do them, this is the book for you. It's called Getting Things Done. This guy has built this incredibly effective system to help you get the things that pop into your head done in the world. And super simple process. It goes into the details, but the gist of it is, 1, have a master list. 2, review that list at least weekly. 3, take things off the list and get them in your calendar to do. And that is it, right? You just have one list. You don't have a bunch of lists. Because if you have a bunch of lists and you think of something, then you got to decide which list to put it on. And that is another step that deters the getting the phone out and putting it on your list. So 1 master list, you review the list every week, and then you get the things off the list into your calendar and you get them done. And it's been super effective for me. And I don't even remember why I'm saying that right now, but hopefully that's helpful. All right. We'll drink. And let's get into this. All right, so memory lane and recap. Here we go. Episode 2. If you guys remember episode 2, quality versus quantity. So what I'm going to do is I've got like 15 episodes on here. I'm just going to do a quick recap of that episode, and we're going to get a bunch of knowledge bombs. That's the plan. Knowledge bombs to commemorate, to I never celebrate much. We didn't celebrate much growing up. To celebrate the win, hitting an episode every week for a whole year, which is just crazy to think it's been a year of coming in this studio every Tuesday evening without a hitch, which is a feat in and of itself. But nutrition quality, it was episode number 2, nutrition quality versus quantity, right? That's a big thing you have to understand, because the world of nutrition that you get fed is so quality based. It is so quality based, right? It's like, oh, eat this, don't eat that. Salads are good. Trans fats are bad. Animal fats versus plant fats. Refined carbohydrates versus complex carbohydrates. Whole wheat versus refined breads. What else you got? What else you got? You got a lot of stuff that goes along those lines. I guess that's enough for now. And what is all that talking about? It's talking about the quality, which is great. Quality is super important. But you know what? If you only ate 100 calories of the most perfectly nutritious food on the planet, you wouldn't live. So you cannot get away from the quantity of what you're eating. What is the total amount of the different things you eat that you're taking in, right? Because if you're taking in, all your macros, but you have no micronutrients, well, that's a problem, right? If you're taking in a bunch of micronutrients because you eat a lot of plants, but your macros are falling short, that's a problem, right? So it's the quantity has to be considered and made paramount, and then we're going to start to refine the quality. Because we've got to make sure that we get in enough calories, we're taking enough energy. If I'm only eating 700 calories a day and I'm trying to be productive, I'm trying to go out into the world and do good things and have energy and be positive for people and do all the fun things and the productive things I want to do, well, I have to make sure I'm getting enough energy to make sure that happens. And then if I want to, make sure that my organs function and my body functions optimally, secondary, I have to make sure I get enough proteins, fats, and carbohydrates to allow all the functions of my body to happen. I don't know if that's good English or not, but you get what I'm saying in the micronutrients. So the quantity matters, right? If you're getting 0 grams of vitamin C, that's a problem. You get scurvy, okay? So if you get 1 microgram, well, that's not enough either, right? So the quantities have to be coming in. Then we're going to look at the quality, all right? So that was episode 2, and we hammered on that, which is super critical, something I like to say, which I have no idea where that came from. Episode 3, the dual sides of metabolism. I love these titles because they just say exactly what we're talking about. The dual sides of metabolism. So there's 2 sides of metabolism. Right? If I say, what is metabolism? You would say, oh, it's the amount of energy my body burns in a day or whatever. Unless you've been listening to this podcast and you go, no, it's not only just the amount of energy that your body burns. It's also the rate of cellular reproduction, right? Cellular replication. So my cells, your cells, our cells, they're always replicating and dying. They're always duplicating themselves and then passing away, right? This is a constant process throughout your entire life. And that is the other side of metabolism, right? If your body's producing energy, but it's not replicating itself, then it's going to die. If it's replicating itself, but it can't produce energy, it's going to die, right? It needs energy to do the replication. You need replication to sustain your body, your tissues. And so those are the dual sides. And we have to think about that if we're going to think about like how healthy is my metabolism, right? Like I've got enough energy to do and maintain my life and function here, but am I not taking enough material, amino acids and fatty acids to continue to replicate my cells at a healthy rate? And that's a challenge you can run into, right? If you're just very carbohydrate dependent and you're very low on your fatty acid and your amino acid intake, well, that's gonna hinder the other side of your metabolism, that cellular replication side. So we have to, my nose is itching. We have to ensure that we're feeding both sides of metabolism. And that's what we talked about in episode 3. Episode 4, and most of these episodes I'm talking about, well, all of them on this list right here, were the first 14 where I said, and we got into, how does your body work, right? Because if you know how your body works, you know how to take care of it, and then you don't get duped into, this fad, and this person says this, and the grapefruit diet, and the potato diet, or, hey, you only need cardio, or, hey, you only need yoga, or, hey, you only need, we want to, the world wants to simplify things, which is good because we also know that, hey, when you simplify something that decreases, we can see clearly if it's simple, and it's going to decrease our anxiety and increase our motivation. So when you simplify, you could take action, which is great, but those simplifications have to be accurate, right? We want them to be accurate. So we need to simplify as little as possible. As little as possible to be accurate, but we need to be simple, all right? So dual sides of metabolism, episode number 3. Episode number 4, what do we talk about there? Understanding the balance of food and nutrition. So, this was a cool one for me because one of the things that happened during this whole, especially the first 14 episodes, is I was really thinking deeply about what it is that I thought and what in the world does that mean? all your thoughts are underpinned by other thoughts. It is a house of cards is not a good analogy because that implies that it's fragile, and it is not. But our thoughts are built upon thoughts, right? Like, so I didn't exactly know everything. Like, I would say things, and I didn't know. I don't know if this is making any sense to you right now, but I don't think I'm making good sense out of it. But our thoughts are built upon thoughts. And so when I would say something, I knew it was true, but I wanted to dig into why it was true. And in episode 4, I had like a little breakthrough. I saw nutrition, I saw physiology for the first time in a little bit different way. And what I saw nutrition was doing as it was working with physiology was that nutrition was essentially good nutrition was an optimal replacement rate of what we were losing, right? Our bodies are functioning, they're doing whatever they're doing in the world, and they're using up energy and raw material to do these things. And so, what optimal nutrition became was taking the perfect, which you could never be able to do, which you try and strive towards, the perfect amount of nutrition to match that output, right? So we ended up with this thing that made sense to me is calling it replacement rate. Am I replacing what I'm losing at the optimal rate? And to me, that was huge. I'm like, man, this is really bringing some clarity for me and helping me understand exactly what I'm trying to accomplish, right? Because if you're taking in too much, that can present problems. And if you're taking in too little, that can present problems. And so finding that optimal replacement rate of nutrition is what the ultimate goal would be. And that was episode 4. And that was a big one for me. And I really enjoyed that. Okay, episode 5, we got into what is exercise. So we kind of moved off of nutrition, and then we started to talk about exercise and what it is. And this was a 2 episodes. I had to break it up into 2 episodes. So episode 5 and 6, episode 5 was what is exercise, and episode 6, what is exercise continued. Very, very clever title. What is exercise continued? Great, Dennis. And so, if you remember, exercise is signal. That is what it is. Your physiology is out in the world. It's encountering stuff all the time. And what it encounters, it adapts to. And we call those encounters signal. It's a signal to the physiology to do something, right? So if you're inactive, you're not doing anything, well, guess what? That's still a signal that says to downregulate energy output, that says to downregulate cellular reproduction, that says to downregulate. Why? Because it's trying to meet, physiology is trying to meet its own level, and it doesn't want to expend or utilize or waste material or energy on something it doesn't need. So it's always adapting up, adapting down based on the signal that it's receiving. And that is ultimately what exercise is, right? So if you want high tissue density, you want high capacity for energy production, and you want your tissues to be able to move and function and not get super stiff or super weak, then you know what you need to do, right? Tissue density is going to come down to strength training. Energy production is going to come down to your cardiorespiratory, right? So how much conditioning work am I getting? Because that's really what conditioning work is. So think about conditioning work as in, hey, I'm walking, my body can keep up with the energy demand of walking, but if I move to a jog, can I still keep up with that energy demand? And then if I move to a run or a sprint, I'm going to top out that energy demand. My body's not going to be able to continue to produce enough energy to keep up that activity. So that's essentially what cardio conditioning, cardiorespiratory conditioning is. It is teaching your body how to produce, create, it's definitely not creating it. Yeah, produce energy at a rate that matches what your physiology is needing at that time, right? Sitting here takes a certain amount of energy. Moving anything above and beyond that is more energy. And then thirdly, so that's cardiorespiratory. And then thirdly, if you only pick up heavy weights and if you only run in the exact same positions, then there's all these other ranges of motion and movement patterns that we're not getting into, and our body gets stiff. It loses capacity to get into those positions. And so we need to do some form of mobility work to ensure that we maintain healthy function in our tissues and ranges of motion throughout our entire life, right? We don't want to be limited. We don't want to get put into a box of movement patterns. And yeah, nobody likes being in a box, last I checked. That was episode 5 and 6. Episode 7, how does training work? And that's what we start to explain or help people understand where an overuse injury is going to come from, right? Because training is, I always use this, and one of the first things I ever learned about training was that you get the dirt and the shovel analogy, right? You got ground, you got dirt, which is your physiology, your body, and then you got the shovel, and that shovel comes in and is the shovel being the exercise, and that shovel takes a little bit of something out of the dirt. Energy, material, whatever, right? Your tissues get a little bit worn, your energy gets a little bit expelled, and then your body has to go in and fill that back in and then put a little bit on top. And that little bit on top is the adaptation. And what can happen is people get really excited about fitness, and so they do a whole bunch of shoveling and not a lot of filling, and then eventually that leads to some feelings of pain. Is that how that works? Oh man. Anyways, and so those are overuse injuries, right? I'm continuing to break down. I mean, it's not an analogy. When you go and you exercise and you're causing, micro tears, those aren't it. That isn't air quotes. That's actually what's happening. You're creating micro tears, little traumas in the bone, in the tissues, and the ligaments and tendons, and then your body needs time to heal those up and build them back stronger. And that's how you build fitness. And so that's what we learned and began to understand in episode 7. How does training work? Okay, episode 8. Now we started to get, which is called the stress rest continuum. We started to get into the more global, well, I guess all this is pretty global to this point as well, but that overall, stress rest continuum, right? So, you're either sleeping out cold, which is the least amount of stress, or you're wired and, out of your gourd for whatever reason, which is the most amount of stress, and that you can't be in both places at the same time, right? That's why if you're stressed out, you don't sleep well, because your physiology is too high for it to come down to shut everything off and to get into to a recovery type mode. I don't like mode, but you know what I'm saying? And so that stress rest continuum is being able to identify and understand that first, but then being able to identify that, hey, I'm a little bit too stressed right now. What's contributing to that? Because we got the other concept we introduced there, which is total stress load, because everything is a bit of a stressor. Work, relationships can also be a de-stressor. If you've got good connection and communication and they downregulate your stress levels. Exercise is a stressor. Your finances could be a stressor. Not sleeping enough is a stressor, right? So we have to be able to recognize, hey, I got a lot going on in my life right now. I'm going to have to dial something back. Maybe my exercise today, you should move every day, but maybe I'm not going to go 90% all out and lay myself out today. I'm going to take a nice 60, 75% effort today and just move, get my blood flowing, more of a recovery type exercise session, right? Because you can have recovery training and you can have adaptive training where I'm going to try and get a strong signal and elicit an adaptation today. My energy's good, my stress levels are in a good place. I'm gonna get some good sleep tonight. Let me do that today. That's what we talked about in that stress rest continuum and trying to learn and understand how our physiology works overall. Like we gotta be able to recognize, in some of the later episodes, more recent ones I've done, talked about that. It's I think the last one actually, it's really important to begin to understand that concept if you're going to be able to, take the best care of yourself that you can. Okay. And we talked about that in episode 8. Episode 9, feeling fine with episode 9, SRC, TSL, vagus nerve and breathing, right? So episode 8, we talked about the stress rest continuum. And then episode 9, we talked about stress rest continuum as well and TSL, but how does that work? What is this vagus nerve doing? And how is our breathing tied into this vagus nerve so we can get a tool instead of just dialing back on a stress, but an actual tool to where I can tie into my physiology. I can use my breathing to downregulate the vagus nerve, which will downregulate my overall physiology and start to if you will, manually control my stress response to the best of our ability anyways. I mean, if there's a sketchy situation, I hate to say it, but it always, paints the picture clear. If there's a dude in the room with a gun, hey, breathwork's great, and you should probably try and use it, but that physiology is going to do what it's going to do. You know what I'm saying? It's the elephant in the rider. It's always right there. And so that's what we talked about in episode 9, tying in stress, rest, continuum, and being able to learn how to use some breathing, some intentional breathing to help downregulate our physiology, our body, so that we can control the amount of stress we are incurring. Episode 10, the mind and body, the psychophysical. So that led into now like getting into how our thoughts are affecting our physiology. We talked about the astronaut on the rocket ship that's blasting into space. Now, he ain't moving. He's just laying there waiting for the rocket to go off, but his heart rate is maxed out. Well, how is that possible? Because of what he's thinking. There is a bomb under me, and it's about to blast me out into outer space. That would get your heart rate up, and we all know that. The other analogy, the great one is, like if Hindu culture, they don't eat cows. Cows are sacred. So, if there was a Hindu in America and he was eating a delicious dish and he'd come to find out that it was, steak bites in there, well, that thought is going to cause a physiological response. So we started to understand like, hey, there's this stress thing going on. There's these contributors, and one of the contributors is what do I think about? What do I ruminate about? What do I feel and think about my future and all the other things, and being able to kind of get those thoughts into a more in a better place, And it's something one of the biggest things I think that people can learn, and I can even get better at, is that realizing that my physiology, my body's current state, is also affecting my thoughts, that it goes both ways. It's not just that I think something, I have a physiological response, but my physiology, my current physiological state is affecting the thoughts that are popping into my head, right? How does that work? Well, think about it, right? So if it's at night and you're in your room, and just do this, just stick your hand with all the lights out, just stick your hand in the closet and let it sit there for a little bit. What's going to happen is it's going to get your physiology up, and then your brain's going to start to fill in like, hey, what could be in there? If you do this when you're 6, it's really going to happen, right? The older you get, the less likely that's going to happen, because there's no scary things in the dark, right? At least we hope. But our physiology affects our thoughts, and our thoughts affect our physiology. They are connected. They're interwoven. Okay. That's why having a breathing technique or a breathing practice is so valuable. And so that was episode 10. Got a handful more on this sheet. Episode 11. Wow. See, here's what ended up happening. Episodes 10, 11, and 12 were all mind-body. That's how deep we went on the mind-body connection. And if this is the first time you've seen the No Body podcast, I would highly, highly recommend go back to the beginning. I was watching some of the old episodes, man. They look different. The camera shot was different. We didn't have this. We didn't have this back here. There was just a giant empty wall, which I thought I would get resolved in like, a couple, 2-3 weeks, third or fourth episode. It took all the way to episode, I forget what it was, 21 before we got the sign up, made this thing look official. But, it's that whole, getting things out of your head into the world, I actually got good at the getting things done list because of the podcast, right? I had so much going on with the gym and putting the podcast together. Like I had to get organized. Otherwise, I just couldn't do it willy-nilly. So episodes 10, 11, and 12, all mind-body connection. Fantastic stuff there. And 13, 13 was by far my favorite episode. Let's take a little break from this for half a second. I don't know if guys know this or not. I might have said it along the way, but I never even put out the first 2 episodes. They were so bad, and I was so frazzled because I had set these parameters, these expectations of what was going to happen. And anytime I made a quote unquote a mistake, I just lost it. My brain affected my physiology, and my heart rate went up, and I started to sweat, and I just kept trying to roll through it, and I was fumbly, and I wasn't putting good thoughts together, and it was just, it was 30 to 40 minutes of just shite. And I didn't even put them out. They never went out. I re-recorded one twice. It was still terrible. So maybe 3 times. I struggled. And then what I did was I didn't quit. I said, hey, you know what? Maybe you need to change these parameters and change the expectation. And once I did that, it really took the pressure off me, and I was able to start to get these podcasts put together. Also in the beginning, and I know I said this a handful of times, it was taking sometimes 6 to 8 hours of prep of getting my thoughts organized before doing a podcast. Now I got it down to like 2 typically. But that was very stressful. And the reason I say all that was because episode 13, when I was like, you know what? I don't care how long this takes. I don't care if I ramble on and just say whatever. I want to get all this information on episode 13, which is what is nutrition. I just wanted to do it. I knew I had to cover multiple layers. And I said, I don't care if this thing takes me an hour. I'm just having fun and I'm getting it out there. And that was a breakthrough episode for me. I really enjoyed it. It was the first time I had a great time doing it and felt amazing afterwards. And it is a breakthrough episode. I had that realization and understanding of what nutrition was. It might have been 2 or 3 years prior. So I was stoked to finally get that down somewhere and out into the world. And if you really want to get a deep understanding of nutrition and where it's coming from, episode 13. But if you remember, we talked about you can't eat rocks. And, people, get the internet troller go, duh. Yeah, well, duh. Okay. Well, maybe there's some deep knowledge in the simplicity of that statement. You can't eat rocks, but yet somehow you have minerals in you. So how does that work, right? And we talked about the upregulation and the changing of these minerals as they go from the mycelium, which is mushroom, into plants, and then the animals eat the plants, and then we eat the animals. And every process along the way is changing, making small changes to these molecules and these minerals that make them more absorbable or absorbable in general based on where we're eating them, right? If you just scrape off some rock and, a little bit of powder and put it in your food and eat it, well, you're just not going to absorb that because you don't have the enzymes to break that down into an absorbable form. But the mycelium does, which the exchanges that into the plant, and then the animal comes and eats the plant in that mineral form, and that animal has the capacity and the enzymes to change it into a more absorbable form. And so as these things get transferred from the rock or the dirt in the earth, they get, I don't want to say transformed, but they get changed into more absorbable forms the farther up the chain they go. And when you see that, you start to understand, oh, that's why the iron in steak is more absorbable, generally speaking, than the iron that I get from plants. And understanding where we fall as omnivores in the food chain has a huge impact on our capacity to absorb the food, the nutrition that we're getting. And that was episode 13, one of my all-time favorites. All right, so that was a list of like my favorite episodes. And we went 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 13 episodes was me just getting information out of my head that's been stuck in there for years. And this is an awesome outlet for it. It helped me to get things organized, helped me to think about them, had a couple breakthroughs and understanding, and it was incredibly valuable. But we're not done yet because we got memory lane recap continuing. All right, so episode 17, the exercise, and So that was basically our physiology, right? How does our body work? And that was the first 13. And then I started to get into some more specific stuff or answering some of those questions out there. So episode 17 was the exercise and diet debate is over. And why did I call it that? It's because it is. It's because it is, right? Because when you set the parameter of what your goal is, now you know what your exercise and your nutrition needs to be, right? So if your goal is to, let me see if this makes sense to you. If your goal is to, live a long time and have your body function really well the whole time, then we already know what your diet and exercise program is. Why? Because if your body's going to function a long time, it needs to be able to do 3 things. What are 3 things we're all going to lose as we age physiologically? Well, are we going to get weaker or are we going to get stronger? Well, we're going to get weaker. Are we going to get have more energy or less energy? Well, we're going to have less energy. And are we going to become more mobile or less mobile? We're going to become less mobile. Okay. So if our goal is for my body to function well and to live a long time, then my training program has to have these three things in there. If it doesn't, then there's a big hole in the game, and I'm not setting myself up for the best chance possible to have a long, healthy life. Okay. End of story. And then with an understanding of nutrition, well, okay, you can say, hey, carnivore or paleo or what are the other ones out there? Vegan, vegetarian, what do we got? We got the Whole30, right? We got all these different ways or diets that people should be eating, but none of that really matters when you understand, well, okay, well, if you want your body to function as well as possible and live a long time, well, you better get in optimum nutrition. You better make sure that you're getting in enough amino acids, fatty acids, and carbohydrate, because it matters, into your body to make sure that you're optimizing that stuff. You better make sure that you're getting all your micronutrients in the optimal rate, right? And so the exercise and diet debate is over unless your goal falls outside of that. Well, who would that be? Hey, I want to be a pro football player. All right, well, you still need to do all those things, but you're going to maybe take in more than you need to and push your body farther than you need to, and you're going to lose a little bit of function potentially based on that goal. And that's a trade-off that somebody would have to make, right? Hey, I'm going to have a fantastic life. I'm going to have, enough money that I never have to worry about it again, but I'm going to have to sacrifice my body a little bit to do that. And to me, if I lose 5 years or I have a little bit less function in the last 10 years, then to me, that's okay. Hey, that's something to have to make. But for the general population of people that just want to live well, avoid disease as long as possible, have a body that feels good, works good, and lasts a long time, the exercise and diet debate is over. That was episode 17. Episode 20, 25, and 31. So again, these are some of my favorites. We got into the book, and I came across a book over the past year, and it rocked me and raised my level of understanding of just how connected we are as humans and just how connected we are with our parents in the womb and immediately outside the womb. And that was the book, The Development of the Unconscious Mind. And that's the episode. Episode 20, we got the sign up to highlight that. I highly, highly recommend. Well, I guess I don't highly recommend reading the book because when I heard about it on a podcast. Oh yeah, the guy was on the Huberman podcast. Oh, I should write Alan Shore. And so you could listen to the Huberman podcast with Alan Shore on there. It's fantastic, and he breaks it down in more layman's terms. But the book was written to psychologists, so I did not expect that. So I don't recommend reading the book because it is very word heavy. But if you like complex things, then I would get the book. But the podcast we covered the highlights, the Huberman podcast, but it just talks about those initial connections with primary caregiver, or our mother, generally speaking, and how important they are to our physiological and psychological development. And it was one of those new things when you think you know everything about physiology and what's going on, and then you come across something like that and it just blows your mind. And so I'm super excited about those, and I loved that book and those podcasts. And then we had something special happen. Episode 23 had our first guest on, Taylor Whitman, type 1 diabetic, and it was super fun. It was super fun for me to have somebody else in the room. I wasn't just talking to a camera, I was actually talking to a human, and it was sharing this podcast experience with somebody else and giving them an opportunity to share kind of something, a health. To me, they've always kind of been more health focused, obviously, and give them somebody else the opportunity to share what's going on in their mind and share their experience. And so that was episode 23. And it was the first guest that we had on. And thank you, Taylor Whitman. Shout out. Hopefully everything's going great in your new home and life is good. Episode 40, 42, and 44. Oh, yeah. And then, again, you think, I know everything about when I say everything about, my interests, I'm always interested in something until I get it. And then I'm like, okay, I got it. And then I lose interest, right? So I'll keep gathering details. I'll keep gathering information and I'll keep learning until I go, oh, that makes sense. That's basically how it works. And then boom, I'm good. And I'll go find something else that I'm interested in. And so, I knew how the body worked. I knew that you needed strength, conditioning, and mobility to make your body last a long time. And that's how it worked. And, you got these levers and pulleys and your muscles pull on the joints and that's how things work. And then I came across the fascial system, if you didn't know where I was going with this one. And that rocked me. And so 40, 42, and 44 were all about the fascial system and how we used to think we knew how the muscles and joints worked, but we really don't. And that muscle is not transferring a linear force. It is not a thread pulling on a joint. It is transferring force into connective tissue, into your fascial system, which is one giant system, and it transfers force through there, not just linearly, right? If I flex my bicep, it's not just creating this action right here, pow, it's creating force all the way around omnidirectionally through the fascial system and creating strength and stability and movement. And I'm still learning about this thing. Actually, I've taken a little bit of break, but I got to figure out how to get this incorporated into the training at North Industry, which is the next step. It should be happening in the next 6 to 8 months. 6 to 9 months. But that was an exciting thing, new thing that I learned over the past year. I was excited to share that with you guys. Two more here. Episode 43, what emotions? Oh yeah, this was another break. Wow, it's been a great year. I've learned 3 massively cool things in 1 year. That's a good year. What emotions do you use to drive your behavior? And this breakthrough came through. I'll just recap it really quick. Episode 43, you're going to go out into the world and you're going to take action. Well, what emotions are you using to drive that behavior? Is it anger? Is it fear? Because you see a lot of people that'll work out based off of fear. They're afraid they're going to lose their gains. They're afraid they're going to get fat. They're afraid they're going to be unattractive, right? So they're executing a behavior, and that behavior is being driven by their fear. Hey, if it's a net positive, great. But maybe we could use a different emotion to drive that behavior, right? Maybe I'm going to go out and I'm going to act in the world instead of acting in the world out of fear or anger, because I tell you what, when I get angry, I can get some work done. And I know a bunch of you can relate to that, right? Like that is a strong motivator that I've had for a long time, right? But what I realized was I can be super effective, but it's only effective in certain ways. That's not the most effective way to go train another human or coach somebody is angry, right? That you can get them to do things, but it might not be the best way to do it. And so maybe if I went and maybe I was motivated by love, right? Maybe if I filled my physiology, my mind with just like a love for other people, and I went out and I coached people, that I could be more effective in my coaching. And lo and behold, I am. And obviously there's different times where you're like that, but being cognizant of it, what emotion is driving my behavior right now, and being able to just to switch those gears and get good at it, because it's not easy, but to switch those gears and get into one that's going to be more productive for the activity that I have, right? If I was special forces and I was going to take out bad guys, probably not going to use love to do that task, right? I'm probably going to use a little bit of anger and aggression because that's what I need. That would be a better situation for that behavior. But that's not most of us or anybody listening to this podcast, most likely. And so being able to identify what emotions I'm using or you're using to drive your behavior, that was a huge breakthrough. And that came through the reading of a book called The Origins and History of Consciousness, which is different than the development of the unconscious mind, but also another one called Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson. And those 2 books, I've read them about 4 times each to get that epiphany, that breakthrough in understanding how our emotions are driving our behavior. So that was an awesome thing to be able to share with everybody. And then the last one on this list here, episode 45, oh my God, creative illness, which was a super cool thing to discover when we pulled that out of Man, I've been just studying the unconscious like mad lately, haven't I? Creative illness, if you remember episode 45, focused on Freud and how he went into this very interesting state of just deep research, kind of paranoia, experimentation, and he came out of it was with an idea that we all know and just take for granted today, that the thing I've been talking about, that there is this unconscious, there is this part of our mind that is driving in driving our thoughts and driving our behaviors and getting us to do things, helping us, because it is incredibly helpful to not have to be, you can't be conscious of everything you're doing. You just can't. So you have this unconscious mind. Well, you take that for granted. I take that for granted. But up until 1860, that wasn't even a thing. Freud went into that creative illness, and that was his breakthrough that came out of that. Now, was that Freud? Was that God? Was that the evolution? Was that human evolution of the species that was pushing something out? Who the heck knows? But what is undeniable is that it happened. You cannot deny that it happened, right? He did go deep into learning something. He did develop a bit of a state of paranoia, yet still functioning in society. And the outcome of that, after 6 years, by the way, was the culmination of the understanding of the unconscious, which is it's a huge breakthrough in human understanding. So those were some of the highlights over the past year, some of my favorite episodes, things I love sharing with you guys. And then I just wanted to do a quick shout out to the guests that I was able to have on over the past 52 episodes. Super thankful that the people that came out. Taylor Whitman, first episode with T-Rock, type 1 diabetic, got to hear her story. Jeremy Philo, super excited to have a good friend of mine, Jeremy, on. We got to sit down and kind of dig into his life a little bit and, solve for some challenges he was having, right? He was having some challenges when he would travel for work. He travels a lot. He wasn't getting his fitness in, and we put some solutions in place, and lo and behold, I followed up with him 2-3 months later. He was still doing those things. So just, it was a good example of how a coach can help you think outside of your own thoughts, because you can't solve the problems in your life with the same thinking that created them. Okay. You have to, that's where a coach can come in and say, hey, I know you. I kind of know how you think. I've got a different view on the world, and I can help you kind of navigate your mind and come up with solutions or different ways to see things and kind of have breakthroughs and speed up that process of breakthroughs. Why would you continue to just hit your head against the wall when you could have a coach that could speed up and shorten that process drastically? And that's what I try and do for people, right? I'm not telling you what to do. As a coach, I don't tell you what to do. I help you navigate your own brain and see the world differently, because when you see the world differently, what do we know? You're going to take different action, right? When you see that's just it. When you see the world differently, you take different action. The action you take right now, you're taking because of how you see the world. So if you're not happy with the action you're taking, you need to change the way you see the world, not just change the action, okay? When you see the world differently, the action changes automatically. You behave differently. And so anyways, we got to explore Jeremy's life a little bit and help him come up with some solutions. Had Ryan Mars on, helped him refine his nutrition a little bit. He was already counting macros, and help him dial that in a little bit better. You should see the guy now. He's getting super jacked. After that, Mahi Alston. What a crazy story. I had no idea celiac disease would do that to people, right? I didn't know it was like that. Had to look it up, learned. Got to hear her wild story. I mean, how her OBGYN helped her figure out what the heck was going on, which makes no sense. But hey, that's what you get when you go to a doctor that just enjoys learning about things, wanted to learn outside of what they had to practice every day, and had solution for her and helped her out a ton. Omar came on, kidney transplant. Whoa, what a story that was. Super thankful for Omar. Another fantastic member of the gym, and appreciated him taking the time to share that story with us. Kidney dialysis is crazy. Who knew you couldn't eat any salt ever? And you have to increase your protein intake, which is counterintuitive based on what some people say about how bad protein is for you. And then last guest, we had Ray Garza, longtime friend, longtime coach, He was able to help people by sharing his experience. We're going from, smoking to coaching. It's a great title. If you don't know, I did not come up with that. I run all the audio through an AI program that writes up the description and gives me a title. And I mean, if that doesn't tell you AI is coming and it's coming big time, I don't know what does, because from smoking to coaching, I would have never came up with that. That was super cool and super catchy, but thankful Ray, main man Ray, Father Ray, was willing to take the time to come on and share his experience with, going from where he was to where he is with coaching and everything. And hopefully that inspires some other people to step into that coaching role, because you can do it part-time, man. Being a part-time coach is a great thing to do with your time. It's worth the effort to go through, because you're going to have to go through some stuff. You're going to have to get good and comfortable with speaking in front of people. You're going to have to get good and comfortable with going up and correcting people, right? Because we have this, I feel bad. I'm telling somebody they're doing something wrong. No. Get rid of all that nonsense. You're helping somebody move better, and they want it. That's going to the coaches out there. And so thankful for Ray to come on. All right. Some of my favorites, some of my favorite episodes and favorite people came on, and I'm thankful for them. Well, I hope this audio is recording. That's one of my things you should check a lot. Oh, Lord. Okay, it's going. Thank God. That would have been so upsetting. I can tell you that. Moving forward, I'm going to cut back a bit. I'm going to take a month. I want to get that time back. If you don't know, it's usually 2-3 hours Monday, been in there, and then maybe a little bit Tuesday, but not always. And then I got Monday afternoon, I got another hour of getting the episodes up and getting the description loaded in and doing all that stuff. Takes another hour Monday in the afternoon. And then Tuesday afternoon, I'm recording. And this is an hour, to 2 hours between getting the recording done and getting everything uploaded and all that other stuff. And sometimes the uploads don't work, and it takes a lot of time. So I'm anywhere from 4 to maybe 6-7 hours a week on the podcast. And my idea of what I thought was going to happen didn't exactly happen, because I didn't realize how much of another business this was, and how I was going to take marketing. It was going to take, I would probably need another 4 or 5 hours a week of getting marketing out for, reaching out to other podcasts, doing these things to try and get it to grow. And I don't know if that is going to yield. The ideal outcome is that, it turns into this great thing and it's amazing and it's helping a ton of people. And I would love to do that. But I have this gym, and this gym is for sure a place that I can put my time and create immediate impact with people. And I realized that there's no limit to the amount of time I could be putting into North Industry. Coach development, membership development, program development, building a personal training business for people who want personal training, developing nutrition coaching. I mean, there's an unlimited amount of time I can put into that. So what I want to do is I want to get my 6 hours back a week. I'm going to take a month off from the podcast and just kind of think about what I want to do and exactly how I want to go about it. So that's the plan. Right now I'm tentatively thinking like I might do an episode a month. And, like I said, work on the YouTube stuff and get those videos put together. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm just going to turn it off for a month and go from there. But for sure, undoubtedly, I'm going to be putting more focus on North Industry, the gym, and helping people there. All right. Final thoughts. The final thoughts, potentially. How hard it was in the beginning, but so worth it. And I got a little note just to spark myself. I already said that. It was really stressful and I did not like it, but I'm super glad that I kept with it and got this stuff out. It feels really good to have set that goal and to reach it. And looking back over these episodes has been really encouraging, because I did get out a lot of stuff that I think it's just, you have to, if you really want to know how your body works, you're going to know by learning those things. There's no doubt about it. I can't think of anything else that you need to know. You got to understand nutrition, how much you need to take in. You got an understanding of stress and how to manage that through breath work. You've got understanding how your metabolism works. We did stuff on sleep, understanding sleep. Yeah, you got a good solid base to know how to take care of your body. And that's what this was all about. It's like teaching people, helping people to understand how their body works so they can take care of it. I feel good about what happened over this past year. but it was really, really hard, but I'm glad I got through that. Thanks to all who have followed along this far. I have no idea who you are. I know a couple people have pretty much caught every episode. I'm thankful for you. Thankful that you were getting something out of it and you did that. I know some people are working their way through it. I know some people that listen to an episode here and here. I got a ton of feedback on Ray's episode. A lot of people love that. Like, man, I listened to that one all the way through, which is fantastic. Yeah, so I appreciate you guys for following along. Next episode, well, there won't be one for a month. So we will see what comes out of the other side of this next 30 days with my downtime. I'm going to take this time and put it into North and see how I feel about everything. But you can still help us grow. You could still share an episode with somebody. You could still take some of these clips. There'll be a few more clips that go out on the YouTube. I might post a couple of those to Instagram. You can share those things and help people, encourage people to go back to the beginning. They're a little bit rougher, a little bit more rough, but still good quality information in there. And thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, and share YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Not necessarily in that order. If you do have any questions or suggestions or anything you'd like to share with me, as always, you can email me at what is the email? Dennis@DennisFenrich.com, and I will get that. And one more time, appreciate you guys. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk with you soon. All right, bye.